Walsh. I am here with the one, the only. I'm here with the DON. That's Don Chrisman. Don, what's up, dude?
Walsh, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, dude. Just got off work. Life is wonderful. We're talking about the AFC South, which is a fun division with a couple teams that I think have a chance to really be huge fantasy contributors this year. So that's always nice. But yeah, what's going on with you? Anything new in your life?
Yeah, no, just getting over puking and doing some other things with the stomach virus, but drinking a Vinny cocktail Pedialyte and enjoying this beautiful night of AFC South.
Oh yeah, baby. That's right. You got peak Dawn here. Dawn after puking. But
I
before
don't.
we before we do get into the meat and potatoes of the AFC South, I do want to let you guys know that we are here courtesy of Auction Draft. Auction Draft is the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018, and you can sign up for them now and get on the list for launch by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. I think that verbiage is actually a little old because they have launched. We have done some drafts through them.
Yeah.
But remember, if you use the promo code LTFF, that gets you 50% off your league. So make sure you're heading over to auctiondraft.net or letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft, entering that promo code LTFF. 50% off. Don and I, as well as the rest of the guys, you might have heard our podcast about auction drafts a couple days ago. So the product is up. It is ready to rock, and we're enjoying it.
Yeah, we just got a fresh off our own auction draft, which was a lot of fun. And check out our last cast if you haven't, because we go over some strategies, what we saw, especially for some of us being first timers. And you can hear my 3-part plan that starts with sticking with your plan.
that is correct. You can hear drunk Don talk about sticking to the plan. It's pretty wonderful. Also, guys, we are in the running for a podcast award courtesy of podcastawards.com. So make sure you go to www.podcastawards.com. You register there and vote for us in the sports category. So that gets all the business, I think, out of the way. And we're going to jump right into the AFC South with the Houston Texans. And of course, the big story with the Texans last year was Deshaun Watson coming in and just being out of this fucking world. Until he managed to tear his ACL. That being said, he should be back ready to rock for the season this year. He's currently going. So Don, I know Vinny is lower on Watson than both you and I.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where exactly you land on Watson. Do you like him as QB2? And then do you like him in the 4th round? I think those are two different questions. So approach them as you will.
It's funny. I think Vinny should have asked these questions before he threw Deshaun Watson in the draft the way he did for the auction draft. Because I think that me and you have answered questions to like, do you prefer Deshaun Watson or someone else? And we just have answered.
It was Carson Wentz. It was Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz, which, like, if you look at their ADPs, Carson Wentz is the 6th quarterback in the draft. Deshaun Watson is the 2nd. So it's like,
who also tore his ACL, by the way.
Yeah, I don't. Vinny like assumed that we both love Deshaun Watson because we both like him slightly more than Carson Wentz. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think Deshaun Watson deserves the number 2. Obviously, he has the ability to be probably the highest scoring overall in fantasy football as he was last year. And now you got to remember he already tore his ACL. He is a mobile quarterback, so that does leave some concern. But if he does have a healthy year, I definitely think that he could be again the number 1 overall fantasy player. I think that him and DeAndre Hopkins built a rapport very quickly, and I think and we'll go into DeAndre Hopkins, why he's going to be my number 1 wide receiver this year. But I like where he lands. Now, you guys have always preached the quarterback late. I'm kind of hopping on that this year, especially. I've gone this past few years of going for like an Aaron Rodgers or something if he lands to me at the right round. But I think quarterbacks are so wealthy that I probably won't have much of Deshaun Watson. Maybe in a league I will, because I think he is going to live up to the potential, and he's going to be where he lands is where he should go, and I think he's going to be a stud. But the quarterbacks of the year are just so wealthy that I'm just going to probably go for another running back or wide receiver in round 4.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he, you can definitely justify him being quarterback too. He's got a ton of upside. He's definitely not going to do the things that he did last year, even if he hadn't torn his ACL. His touchdown rate last year was 9.3%. For reference, Aaron Rodgers is the active career leader in touchdown rate, and his is 6.4%. So he would literally have to sustain the highest touchdown rate of all time, over a sustained amount of
Over the goat.
football in order to do that. So he was always going to regress a little bit. He was never going to put up those games he was putting up last year for the entirety of this season. But he's got so much upside. That ceiling is so high, he could easily finish as QB1. So yeah, I like him as QB2. I think that's fine. Fourth round, way too high for me. No chance I'm going near drafting a quarterback in the fourth round when I can take Mitch Trubisky in like the 13th, or whatever the case may be. I can replicate that production between something like Alex Smith in the 12th and then Tyrod Taylor in the 14th, and like kind of going back and forth. Maybe not replicate that production completely, but good enough. And then in the fourth round, I can load up my team elsewhere. So I'm right there with you on the Lamar Miller, Deshaun Watson takes, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the running backs a little bit. Lamar Miller.
An old favorite of yours.
Yeah. Me and Lamar Miller have had a checkered
roller
past.
coaster.
Dude, yeah, I've been on the Lamar Miller roller coaster for what's felt like an eternity, and I'm still not even sure if I'm off it yet. I'll get into that a little bit, but currently going second pick in the fifth round. That's running back 24. The thing that kind of makes him interesting to me this year is that Deontay Foreman, who's going second pick in the 11th round, running back 47, is coming off an Achilles tear. That's a very serious injury. Not many players have come back successfully from it. So you would think this would be Lamar Miller's backfield. What do you think about Lamar Miller this year, Don?
Yeah, that's I'm very actually he's from when I took notes when we were supposed to do this last week. He has moved up quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Lamar Miller was last year when Deontay Foreman was starting to make quite a wave last year and starting to take away a lot from Lamar Miller until he did tear his Achilles. So I think if Deontay Foreman was not in that position where he's coming back from an Achilles tear, I'd be a little bit Miller. But I like where Lamar Miller is landing. And I think he is in the last of his tier before everyone kind of drops off to where there's a lot of uncertainty with running backs. You kind of know what you're getting with Lamar Miller. He's still a young running back too. I think he's going to be, or he just turned 27. So he's still in the prime. He does have a lot of potential. No one really behind him other than good old Alfred Blue at this point. He's down like almost 10 pounds apparently too. So apparently he's in really good shape. The only thing that worries me, I mean, he only rushed for 3.7 yards per carry last year. That's kind of disappointing. But where he's landing in the end of the fourth round to the beginning of the fifth round, and then the people behind him are like Mark Ingram, who's suspended for 4 games. Ronald Jones, we really don't know about at Tampa Bay. Rashad Penny, which none of us really trust, the Seattle running backs. And Royce Freeman, which today they said Devontae Booker right now is over him for the number 1 running back slated. So we'll see how that works out. So a lot of uncertainty behind him. You know what you're getting with Lamar Miller. If you need a running back, especially if you go receiver heavy in the first 2 rounds, Lamar Miller is going to be a good pick before you start getting into a lot of uncertainty with the rest of the running backs.
Yeah, it's weird because I think there might be even a little bit of uncertainty there, and I'm sure we'll have a clearer picture of this by the time preseason is over. But like from weeks 15 to 17 last year, Alfred Blue actually outcarried Lamar Miller 46-27. Now we don't know if maybe this was like, late season, he's banged up a little bit. Like I don't know exactly. We don't have all the details, but like the fact that Alfred fucking Blue is getting the work over him, bad sign. So I mean, you said it. He only averaged the 3.7 yards per carry. He only got 46 targets out of the backfield, which in the past that's something we've sort of hoped he would become a more prolific pass catching back. That doesn't seem to have happened. You are optimistic about the things, coming in better shape, whatever else the case may be, and just not having Deontay Foreman behind him. But overall, I think your take is pretty. I think it's pretty dead on. I think there's a lot of uncertainty behind him, and if you can snag him in that late 4th, early 5th, he's probably going to end up paying off that value pretty well.
Yeah.
Deontay Foreman going in the 11th round. Again, we said coming off that torn Achilles, I'm not fucking touching him with a 10-foot pole this year. I don't want to draft him.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised like how he's still where he is with being drafted. I mean, he's moved down half a draft since I've last checked, but there's still a lot of running backs I'd probably take after him anyways. So yeah, I mean, an Achilles tear, man. There's the uncertainty of what he could do, and he's a running back. He's gonna be running. That's crazy. I don't know. I'm not touching Deontay Foreman either.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where if he's not healthy to start the season, you're going to take him at his 11th round ADP or whatever, and then like he's not going to play for a couple weeks, and you're going to drop him because someone's going to get hurt or someone's going to someone on the waiver wire is going off or like whatever else. It's just like it's
not the spot.
Yeah, it seems like such an obvious spot where you're dropping that guy in a couple weeks anyway that I don't see the point in taking him. I would advise keeping an eye on the rest of the backfield, mostly Alfred Blue, I guess Tyler Irvin, if you really care that much. But it's worth noting with Blue that he did outcarry Miller at the end of the season last year. And he's going undrafted right now. So if this is a guy who, is going to be getting significant amounts of carries in what should be a pretty good offense, then he might be a guy to at least look at in your drafts. Do you have anything else on the running backs before we move to wide receiver?
I do not.
All right, let's go right to your guy, DeAndre Hopkins. You alluded to it before. You're number one over Antonio Brown. Tell me why. Tell me what you expect from him this year.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, you guys know, especially I'm a big grudge holder. Once someone burns me once, it's just like never again. Of course, the 1 year that I drafted him first round, he did nothing.
We like to call that the Brock Osweiler year.
That was mainly Brock Osweiler. So, but he comes back this year, 2017, builds a crazy rapport with Deshaun Watson. And I mean, they go fucking off last year. He had 13 TDs last year. He was averaging almost 15 yards of reception. And he's in the prime of his career. I think that's where he really oversteps AB with, Antonio Brown's been the number one wide receiver for the past few years, but Antonio Brown's in his 30s. Ben Roethlisberger's always beat up. DeAndre Hopkins is in his prime age, comes off a crazy year. Deshaun Watson's going to come back rejuvenated, and that's going to be his first guy to go to. Man, I think he's going to light it up this year.
Yeah, I can't argue against it. When you initially said it, I think on the first podcast LTFF did this year, I think he made that call. And I remember Vinny and I did the next one, and we were both like, I think Don's making a really good point here, which is rare for us to admit, even when it's true.
Doesn't happen often.
So, yeah, I mean, I still think I'd take AB, but I really can't argue with you at all. I think if anything, it's better to be too early than too late on these guys. And when it comes to the ascension of one and maybe the slight beginning of the decline of the other. So yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, he's going off the board as wide receiver 2 with the 9th pick in the first round. I think you can make an argument to start taking him with the 4th pick in the first round, like overall. So anywhere you get him in that mid first round, I think you're getting a great value.
Yeah, as long as you're not taking them 1 through 3, I respect wherever else you take them.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the man who will be starting opposite him, Will Fuller. He is currently going the end of the 6th round, the 11th pick. That's wide receiver 31. Fuller really, when Watson was in there, man, it seemed like he was catching a 50-yard touchdown like every other play.
That's all it was.
He was the guy who, like, particularly playing DFS lineups, it's like you're trying to predict target volume and that sort of thing. And it's like, well, I can't play Will Fuller because he's an aberration. And then that aberration just kept happening and happening and happening and happening. And eventually, if you hadn't been playing him, you were getting burned every week.
He was the Nelson Aguilar on steroids last year. I was using them both, and they were just like, I'm like, at one point I'm gonna get burned, but luckily I would just catch it. They would catch a touchdown at some point, and they would just keep you in your matchup every week. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at his pure volume numbers last year, only 5 targets a game, and he benefited from 7 of his 28 catches. That's 25% of his catches were touchdowns, as we said. So 28 catches, 7 of them touchdowns, just wild stuff. That being said, I think there's a reason
is the regression talk about to hit?
Well, no, the regression, I think, I think that's the baseline, is that he is going to regress from those numbers. Mm-hmm. But on the positive side of that, I think there's a reason to believe, or you can at least fit a narrative to the idea that this is going to be his first full season. It's also going to be his first full season practicing with Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. I think you could see him maybe develop into more than just a burner this year who catches a couple balls a game. So right. I don't hate his draft price, but if he stays there, I won't really end up with him very much, because there's other guys in that area like Manny Sanders and Randall Cobb, who I think have a much higher guaranteed volume than Fuller, even though Fuller has that higher ceiling.
Yeah, he does fall within where he's ahead of where I would have a hard time taking him over quite a bit of guys. Like I like Jamison Crowder is a full round behind him, and I like Jamison Crowder a lot better than I do Will Fuller. Even like a Marquise Goodwin, I think is going to have a really good year. He's ahead of a lot of, and then there's Devin Funchess, Robbie Anderson. These guys are a round to a round and a half behind him, where I think they could take the argument of probably having a better year than him, and it would be a safer pick.
Yeah, much, much safer. I think where you're taking Will Fuller, you're kind of banking on either he doesn't regress and he's just a special player who can produce fantasy points at a much higher efficiency rate, or you're betting that he takes the next step and becomes a more complete receiver this year. I think both of those are okay bets to make, but I'm not going to be making them when Emmanuel Sanders and, like Jamison Crowder and Randall Cobb are still on the board.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I can do.
No, definitely not. I think that's where I'd probably skip Will Fuller and probably reach a little bit on those guys. I mean, you got even after that, Devin Funchess, Robbie Anderson, Jordy Nelson, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. There's a lot of guys that I just would feel a lot safer with, that I think would outpace him with performance wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Going to, I guess, the third wide receiver who ends up playing in the slot, it's basically between Braxton Miller, who's never really done much, Bruce Ellington, who's kind of been on and off the field, has been injured most of his career, and then they drafted Kiki Cutie, which is a great name, fourth round rookie. And he's an interesting guy in this group. He's sort of a guy in the mold of like a T.Y. Hilton, where he's, small. He's got like 4.4 speed. And he's, likely going to play in the slot, at least to start his career. I'm not really interested in Miller or Ellington, just because we've kind of seen what they can do for the most part. Sure. I think Kiki Cutie's an interesting guy to keep your eye on, but certainly not someone to draft unless he like really shows the fuck up in preseason.
Yeah, I honestly don't know too much about Kiki Cutie just yet. So, but I think there's just so many more receivers that would be someone you could take as a flyer just yet, but maybe he could be someone early in the waivers that you could look at from what you said.
Absolutely. At the tight end position, this is pretty easy. They've got Ryan Griffin and Steven Anderson. CJ Fedorowicz has retired due to concussions, but the team only gave 100 total tight end 100 total targets to the tight end, and only 12 red zone targets to the tight end position as a whole last year. I don't think either of these guys are worth playing unless we get extreme clarity and we really see either of them, really put together some targets early in the year.
So spin the wheel.
Yeah. Spin the wheel elsewhere. Don't draft Ryan Griffin or Steven Anderson.
No, not.
You got anything else on the Texans, Don?
No, man, you could wrap them up.
All right. Well, we'll hear quickly from Auction Draft, and then we will be right back with the Indianapolis Colts. All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Again, make sure you're checking them out. They are a great platform to hold your auctions and run your leagues out of. The Indianapolis Colts, Don, interesting stuff this year. So obviously the big changes are, as it seems, Andrew Luck is back. Everything points towards him, being ready for week 1, being the guy under center. And then also Chuck Pagano out. Frank Reich in. Frank Reich was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles last year, who not only were a prolific offense, but were like a very, very interesting offense and kind of a different offense from your typical NFL fare. So overall thoughts on the Colts, Don, and then dive right into Andrew Luck for me at a 9th round, 8th pick, quarterback 11.
Yeah, it's a lot of new. You got the new coach. You got Andrew Luck that wasn't even in at all last year and missed how many games the year before. New running back position now that Frank Floor is gone, which leaves that open to Marlon Mack. And who else do we got over there?
Nyheim Hines,
right?
Wilkins.
Yeah, Nyheim Hines seems to be the other guy that's being drafted so far. So, I mean, I could tell you already, I don't know what's changed in the past week, but Andrew Luck has moved from the 10th quarterback to the 8th quarterback drafted.
Oh, really?
I don't know but what I have heard and have seen is that apparently he looks really great in camp. He's also apparently has this amazing rapport already with T.Y. Hilton. They look like the best new thing that's come out. So I don't know. Andrew Luck's he's a special talent, man. I don't think he's someone that, comes off an injury and is a bum afterwards. I think Andrew Luck should have a good year. At the 8th pick, I mean, he's moved up to mid 8th round. I don't know at that point. I'm taking Andrew Luck, but I think he's going to be fine. I think he'll finish in the top 10. He's now ahead of Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's interesting for he hasn't been back in a season and a half, and he's somehow moved ahead of Kirk Cousins. I'd probably take Cousins ahead of him. But other than that, I'd probably take Andrew Luck number 9.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Since I started doing these notes about 5 days ago, he's basically jumped around in ADP. So
yeah,
that tells you all you really need to know about the stories coming out of camp. And I think, you can't really understate the importance of Frank Reich coming in. This is a guy who turned not just Carson Wentz, but Nick Foles into like really, really solid quarterbacks. Nick Foles was slinging the ball all over the field in the Super Bowl. He's a guy that I won my fantasy football championship with last year, even though he didn't have a very good game. Kind of just got it on the skin of my teeth. But yeah, it's important. It's going to make a difference. The fact that they have, a new system, though I think they will probably stay with some of the old Andrew Luck tendencies, like running 2 tight ends out there, but we'll get to that a little bit later. If all the news stays positive for Andrew Luck, I don't see, any reason to not take him, pretty much wherever you want past the 8th round. Like if you're in a league that waits on quarterbacks, and he's still available in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, whatever the case may be, absolutely scoop him up. No problem.
Yeah, definitely.
The running back position, I think, is pretty murky, I would say. You've got Marlon Mack, you alluded to. He is currently going the first pick in the 7th round. That's running back 32. My thoughts on him are that he's like last year, he showed to be what we thought he was in college, which was just super inconsistent. He averaged 3.8 yards per carry. He looked explosive and broke some big runs, but he also got 0 or negative yardage on 33% of his carries. And you can't be an every down running back in the NFL losing yardage on 1 out of every 3 carries. You just can't do it. So is he going to turn the corner and, be able to, get positive yardage on a greater percentage, or is he going to be taken over a little bit? I'm not really sure, but do you like him at that ADP in the 7th round?
Well, just real quick, a really reliable quote here is Jim Irsay, of course, the Colts owner that's, never had any issues or anything like that. I'm sure a great football mind.
I think I know this
said
you're going to.
You could see Marlon Mack approaching 1,500 yards.
Yeah, that's a good joke.
I could take that stat to wipe my ass with. I don't care about that at all.
He also guaranteed Andrew Luck would be ready for week 1 last offseason. So we saw how that worked out.
He's still probably hitting the drugs he got caught with a few years ago.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't hate the Marlon Mack where he's going. Here's what I think. I think it all depends on where your approach is with your draft. I think that once if you're someone that wants to take advantage of the wide receivers while everyone's going running back heavy in the beginning, you're going to kind of find yourself short with running backs in the mid rounds. He is someone that's right now slated to be the starting running back. I don't hate that position. I like him over who's going behind him with Marshawn Lynch. I don't care for Isaiah Crowell. I'd probably go Carlos Hyde over him. But then Jamal Williams is going to be in the tandem of a few with running backs. Chris Thompson, who's very slated for the second RB position right now. So there's a lot of tandems or second RBs where Marlon Mack is the number one runner there. Jim Irsay says he's going to run 1,500 yards. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the 7th round pick. I don't love it, but it's okay.
See, for me, I think I'd rather take every single one of those guys that you mentioned, as well as a couple more that are going behind him before Marlon Mack.
Okay.
And the reason I think is just because of the percentage of fantasy points he got last year on big plays, and the percentage I think that he'll get this year on big plays, where I don't want to have to fucking predict whether this guy's going to fall down behind the line of scrimmage 11 times or whether he's going to break a 70-yard run, you know, particularly with 2 other guys still in this backfield and potentially 3 other guys who could have roles in this backfield. So
yeah,
for me, I'm avoiding him. I don't think I'll end up with any shares of Marlon Mack. And, if that burns me, so be it. If he turns into a star, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't think you kick yourself if you pass on Marlon Mack in the 7th round. That's for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention with these running backs in general is, going back to Frank Reich coming in, look at the way Philly's backfield was run last year.
Yeah.
It was, no guy really got more than 40% of the snaps per game. So I could totally see this being a backfield where we've got some Mack, some Hines, some Jordan Wilkins, some Robert Turbin when he comes back from his PED suspension. So it's an interesting backfield, and I'm not sure any of these guys are really fantasy relevant, but let's talk about the next 2 at least, because they are getting drafted. You have Nyheim Hines going 10th pick in the 10th round. That's running back 46. He kind of profiles as a PPR threat, could be used in the slot at times. He's a smaller guy, quick, good pass catcher. I don't really have any interest in him even there.
No, man. To be honest with you, I'd even go with like Doug Martin, who's behind him, and hope for something out of him. I don't know. I mean, look how we're talking about Marlon Mack. We don't know anything about Nyheim Hines and what's going on with that. Someone I'm not going to, choose at that point at the end of the 11th round. I'll go elsewhere.
Yeah. The one guy who maybe I would take is the next guy, Jordan Wilkins, because he's going in the 14th round, 4th pick in the 14th round, running back 60. He's also an interesting guy just because he's the guy who profiles the most as sort of a bell cow in that he doesn't really have any major holes in the game, in his game, and he has good size. I believe he's like 6'1", good pass protector, okay out of the backfield catching the ball. He's not like a guy who's going to excel at a ton of things, but he profiles as a guy who, you can give the ball to, and he's not going to spectacularly fuck up. So maybe that becomes more valuable than the big playability of these other guys.
Yeah.
So maybe I'd take a shot at him, but it's still sort of just a dart throw, and I'm not beholden to Jordan Wilkins by any means.
Cool. I got nothing on Jordan Wilkins, so well said.
All right, fair enough. There's also Robert Turbin, who I said is on a 4-game PED ban, and Christian Michael is still on this team too.
He's just floating around, that guy.
Yeah, seriously. He one of my good friends played or trained with Christian Michael. They're from the same town in Texas, so they trained together. Oh, cool. And he said most athletic guy he's ever seen in person, and just cannot wrap his mind around a playbook at all. So it's
well, that's the problems they had with Seattle, is he couldn't get down the playbook.
Yeah, he just if you ask him to pass block or to read a defense or that kind of thing, it's just not going to happen.
Just couldn't do it.
Yep. Which is a shame because he's had flashes, but what can you do?
Yeah, no, there's definitely talent there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to these wide receivers. We'll start with T.Y. Hilton, obviously the big one. He's going 2nd pick in the 3rd round. That's wide receiver 10. It's interesting that as Lux ADP has jumped. His hasn't really jumped as much, which you would think they would kind of jump together. He's about the same as where he was going last week. What do you think about TY in this spot?
Yeah, I think this is the first time I'm going to drop it this year. I'm a guy that likes consistency, man. And T.Y. Hilton, obviously, we've seen where there's points where he's the number one wide receiver. Like 2 years ago, he was the number one wide receiver. At least for most part of the season. I don't know if he finished it, but he was in the top 3 because, you know what, he has big games with Andrew Luck where he catches a bunch of bombs and a bunch of TDs, but then there's times where he doesn't get that many receptions. So I I would still probably go an Adam Thielen or Tyreek Hill. But then from there, I mean, T.Y. Hilton, man, if Andrew Luck comes healthy, he's a guy that could be a top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Luck gives him the chance to get that consistency that was missing, and so obviously missing last year. It's worth noting that he finished as PPR wide receiver 25 last year. So if Luck, for whatever reason, isn't right and they have to start Jacoby Brissett again, that's kind of what you're getting. You're looking at sort of like an inconsistent low-end wide receiver 2, which, you know, isn't the worst thing to have on your team, but it's certainly not what you're looking for at the beginning of the 3rd round. No. I think going back to the 2016 season and, you know, his time with Luck, we've seen him really be able to be targeted at all levels of the field a little bit more with Luck on the field. So it feels a little high to me. It feels closer to his ceiling than I want. And you're right. There are some other guys there, you know, the Thielens, the Diggs, the Doug Baldwins, the Larry Fitzgeralds, the Tyreek Hills behind him, who I can certainly rationalize going in front of him. That being said, I wouldn't kill you. I wouldn't say you're making a bad pick by taking him there.
Like I said, he could be a top 5 for sure, especially if Luck's there. But I think I would still go with a Thielen or, you know, the Hill or Baldwin. I don't know about every year I keep saying thing. At this point, I just can't draft Larry Fitzgerald no matter what it is because I just think it's like he's 40 years old. Like there's got to be a point where, you know,
I've been out on him like every year, and for some reason I'm like extremely in on him this year, and now this is going to be the year where he just falls off a cliff. Definitely.
That's why I just can't do it. I mean, I've been doing it every year, just staying away. I'm like, yeah, he's so old. I can't do it. And now I don't know. I don't have anything to say about Larry Fitzgerald, so I won't say I'll put him. I'll take Ty over him for sure. But,
okay. Fair enough. Let's talk about Ryan Grant, who, you know, the Colts did say, you know, that he came out as the starter on their depth chart. And as well, Frank Reich said that Ryan Grant and Hilton have clearly separated themselves from the other receivers on the team, which are pretty much just Chester Rogers and a bunch of rookies. So Ryan Grant's been, you know, an effective possession receiver at times with Washington. Do you have any interest in him? He's currently going undrafted, so you can get him for free at the end of your draft. If he's Andrew Luck's number 1 or number 2 wide receiver target, do you have an interest in him?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's someone that would pique interest. So I think that's someone that once we start seeing some preseason games or hear a little bit more off of camp, I mean, he might be someone that you might want to choose instead of maybe at the end of the draft, like a Mohamed Sanu or Christian Kirk or one of these guys who are just 3rd wide receivers on teams that don't have a quarterback named Andrew Luck.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly tons of opportunity for him to get work there. I don't think he'll be doing a ton in the red zone, but then again, you never know. And I think at the very least, he's a guy who should be on your radar as like a bye week fill-in or an injury fill-in or that sort of thing, where maybe you can get by with 5 catches for 50 yards that week, you know, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, definitely.
So keep that in mind. Chester Rogers is their next wide receiver. You would think he would be in the slot. I don't see any reason to draft him. No. And then the name out of camp that's supposedly been the star, been making plays, but again, not really going to see the field too much is Deon Cain. He's a 6th round rookie. I would remember that name, but certainly not someone to worry about, you know, going into this season unless he really fucking flashes in the preseason.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm going to keep an eye on. It looks like he's been impressive in camp and go from there. But there's still a lot of people to take ahead of time and so far, and you kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about these tight ends. We alluded to it before, how Luck has traditionally used two tight ends, whether it's been Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, Jack Doyle, some combination of those three. So now the two tight ends that we've got here are Jack Doyle, who's going the middle of the 11th round, pick 5. That's tight end 12. And then undrafted, you've got Eric Ebron.
Whatever.
So the question here becomes, do you think Ebron should be drafted? It seems not, based on your response.
No.
And then do you think Doyle should be drafted where he's being taken either?
I mean, Jack Doyle's what when I last checked, he was in the number 12 tight end. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I think you just said that too. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, listen, if you're in a 12-team league, Jack Doyle's there, and you're not going tight end early, that's fine. I'm cool with Jack Doyle versus anyone that's behind him. A very injured Tyler Eifert, David Njoku, whatever, Vance McDonald to Pitt, or OJ Howard to Tampa Bay. Those are the guys behind him. Jack Doyle has had rapport with Luck before. He's had, he's a guy that's going to be sparingly. He's going to have some games where he's going to have a touchdown and, maybe 60 yards or something like that. And he's going to produce a decent amount for you each week, and that's fine. He's a decent floor tight end. He's someone that I've had to play even last year where I just needed some sort of a floor out of a tight end, and he would get it for me. So I think that's someone where you're going to get, 8 points here or there, and sometimes 12 to 14. So the number 12 tight end, if you just need some to service you, especially if you're in a 12 team to 14 team league, I'm totally fine with him number 12. I would take him ahead of the guys that are right behind him. So yeah, that's cool. I like Jack Doyle there.
Okay. That's definitely fair. He was used extensively last year. He had 108 targets, caught 80 of those targets, which is a huge catch percentage, 74% catch percentage. And he's been up around that for most of his career. That being said, 690 yards, 4 touchdowns. When it comes down to the actual numbers, he's just not really doing a ton with much of that opportunity. He's, more of a safety valve who'll get you a couple of yards, that sort of thing. You can call me extremely stupid, and I probably am, but I am interested in Eric Ebron again. I like the idea of Frank Reich using him creatively. Reich has said he's excited to see what he can do with Ebron, lining him up in different spots on the field and trying to get him in good matchups, because that's what Ebron can do. Ebron can be used in good matchups. He's a bitch who can't block and can't go up and get the ball in the red zone when there's not a ton going on. But if you've got Ebron in between the 20s and you want to, start him in the backfield and motion him out into the slot, now you're speaking my fucking language. So not as someone that you're trying to draft necessarily, but I am interested in Eric Ebron, and I will be keeping a close eye on his usage in the preseason.
My only notes for here is it says fuck Ebron. That's all I have.
Well, I'm interested to see where Vinny and Shrek fall on this one.
I'm sure they're gonna be on it. Shrek's gonna be on it.
Morons who love Eric Ebron, and I'm trying to see if I'm the last one standing or if we're all just still holding strong.
I think you guys. I think that Shrek. I could see Shrek in one of my leagues that I'm in with him. I just draft Ebron. I'm gonna just be like, fuck.
just throw it down in the 14th round with no other tight end drafted on the team. I'm fucking taking Eric Ebron.
Eric Ebron, god damn it.
Yeah.
I've never been on that. You guys have been. He's been one of the favorites for sure for years. So I want nothing to do with Eric Ebron at all.
And like in previous years, you will probably be right, and I will probably be wrong. So I think that covers the Colts pretty well. I think that about wraps it up. We'll be back with part 2 of the AFC South. We'll be covering the Jaguars, the
Jaguars,
the Jaguars and the Titans. That's not even the normal mispronunciation. Normally people say Jaguars.
Yeah, Jaguar.
But anyway, we'll be covering the Jaguars and the Titans. And yeah, so keep an eye out for that, guys. Make sure you are checking out our sponsor, Auction Draft. And if you missed our podcast on auction strategy, that sort of thing. Make sure you go back and check that out as well. I'm not sure exactly when this is coming out, but if you're hearing it, this upcoming weekend is the first real weekend of the preseason, and we are fucking pumped. Don, are you fucking pumped?
I'm fucking pumped.
I am also fucking pumped. So, keep an eye on usage, keep an eye on who's getting those first team snaps. I'm sure we will be reporting on these things in the coming weeks. Don, you got anything else for the people?
No, yeah, just stay tuned. I mean, this is when we're looking at the Naheem Hines and the Ryan Grants and all that, so we'll get some more into it.
Absolutely. We'll be back. Thank you guys for listening today. Later podcast. All right. I'm going to take a quick piss if that's all right.
Take your piss, man.
And I will be back.
Sweet. We do have one question.
What's up?
We have one question that we got to answer at the end of this one that Shrek sent.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That he sent. It's what about Ingram being his 16th and his first rounder for a trade for 9th overall teamer for Kamara? No, fuck that.
Wait, what?
So basically, he would get Kamara, and he'd have to give up his 9th overall pick in the first round and his keeper Evan Ingram in the 16th.
No, that trade sucks.
A lot.
Let's just tell him to answer that one on Twitter. I don't want to answer that one on the podcast. Yeah, it's like a dumb question, and it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about.
All right.
Cool. Throat's good. Ready to rock.
I'm ready to go, bro. We're doing Jags, right?
Jags first, and then Titans.
Cool.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I am your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I am once again here with the one, the only, the best, the simultaneously the worst, the prophet of fantasy football. These nicknames suck ass. I'm here with the DON. That's Don Chrisman. Don, what's up, dude?
Walshy, I'm ready for the second part. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I am also ready for part 2 of the AFC South. If you did not hear part 1 of the AFC South, we talk a lot about the Texans and the Colts. It's some important stuff, and you should probably listen to it. But right now we're doing part 2. That's going to be Jaguars and Titans. That's also important stuff, and you should probably keep listening to that too. Before we do that, though, Don, we're going to I can talk, I swear. I need to tell you guys that we are here thanks to Auction Draft. So auctiondraft.net, they are the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018. You can sign up now and get on the list for launch by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. And the promo code LTFF is going to get you 50% off that auction league. Don and I and the other boys did an auction, a couple days ago. If you haven't heard the podcast, go check it out. The platform's great. We really enjoyed it. And we're looking forward to doing more with it.
For sure. It was a blast.
It was a good time. Don got super drunk. It was fun.
I did.
That's it's weird. Normally I'm super drunk too, and for some reason I wasn't. But anyway,
I, I, I was drunk and I still felt good about the team, so it was okay.
yeah, you did really solid.
Thanks, man.
So also, guys, we are in the running for a podcast award courtesy of podcastawards.com. You can go to www.podcastawards.com, register for free, and vote for us in the sports category. Please do that as well. That would be really cool of you. But without further ado, we are going to get right into the Jaguars, who made it really far in the playoffs and really had a great season last year. Thanks in most part, I would say, to that vaunted defense, to that shutdown secondary. But we're here more to talk about the offensive prospects of this team than the defense. So Don, what do you think of the Jaguars overall? And then what do you think about Blake Bortles, who is currently going undrafted as a fantasy quarterback this year?
Lies. Get your Jurgens out and start jagging off here, because Blake Bortles is now got squeezed in as number 26.
Ooh.
So he's not getting undrafted. I just saw that today. They squeezed them in because they were only doing 25. This is now on Fantasy Football Calculator, 12-team PPR. They squeezed them in. They felt they needed to add Blake Bortles as the 26th quarterback. So he's last ranked. Yeah, he's not really been a fantasy performer, especially last year. So I would leave him where he's at. He might be someone that would be a good DFS lineup at some points during matchups, but he's not someone I'm going after to draft this year.
That's fair. He doesn't feel like he was, but he had some incredible late season performances, and he was actually QB1 from week 13 on, which is like absolutely stupid. This is a part of the season where, Rodgers was hurt and Watson was hurt and those sorts of things. So, but he's surprisingly been a top 13 fantasy quarterback each of the past 3 years by hook or crook. And I think part of that was towards the end of the year, they let him run the ball a little bit more. I don't know if it was designed runs or he was just dropping back and ducking it a little bit more, but I don't have the exact stats. I'll see if I can pull him up in a couple minutes here. But basically, they let him run the ball more, and he's a pretty good fucking runner. So he ended up having a pretty spectacular last couple weeks of the season, leading to another top 13 fantasy performance from Bortles. That being said, I don't think you really need to draft him that much. It's really not that big of a deal. If you look at these last couple weeks of the season, there was 1 week where he ended up running the ball 6 times for 62 yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in that week. Other weeks he was, yeah, exactly. Other weeks he was throwing the ball a ton. He had over 300 yards passing 3 of the last 5 weeks of the season, and he had 2 or more touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 weeks of the season. So it's a little misleading to say that he was really productive the entire year, but in the right matchups or in the right context, he definitely can be. He definitely can be a streamer. And we'll sort of see what happens there. I don't really think you need to go out of your way to go after him, though. And the reason for that is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just, even looking at those stats, man, he started off pretty poor through weeks 1 to 11. There was only 1 game from weeks 1 to 11 that he threw more than 1 touchdown pass.
Yep, exactly. And for whatever reason,
he loses Allen Robinson and Hearns.
Yeah, those last 5 weeks too, like they were in like a bunch of like either blowouts or like shootouts, which was, kind of weird for what it was. So yeah, I wouldn't count those as the norm, so to speak. The real reason though that I'm sort of down on him this year is because I am extremely fucking high on Leonard Fournette. He's going 11th pick in the first round, running back 9. And this is a guy who, when we first started podcasting this offseason, I was nowhere near like him. I was not about him at all. And sort of as the offseason's gone on and, different things have come out, and I've just sort of considered more, I think I'm like very, very about taking him where he's being drafted. What do you think about Fournette?
Yeah, dude, I like Fournette a lot. I really like him at number 9, and I like everyone he's going ahead of as well. He's a beast, man. I've liked him since, and we've stated plenty of times on podcasts if you've been listening to us through the years. I'm trying to get more into college football. Haven't really, but I've always followed him at LSU since he's been a freshman. I like him a lot. He's also down 15 pounds.
Yeah.
He's trying to stay away from injury. He's lost a lot of weight. He's ready to go, man. He's going to be something special. He's going to be a really good play this year, and I like him a lot at the end of the first round for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. They force-fed him the ball, both on the ground. They gave him targets towards the end of the year, particularly like they force-fed him the ball in the red zone, and that was with him battling ankle injuries all year, which it's hard to say for sure because we don't have a pro baseline for him. But I would think that would affect his efficiency pretty significantly. So if he's into camp with healthy ankles, and I know he's had long-term ankle issues, but healthy ankles, it came into camp about 15 pounds lighter than last year. And, building on a season in which he got all the goal line work, more or less, got about 4 targets per game and was touching the ball 20 plus times a game. Like, yeah, give me that guy in the first round and almost like at any point in the first round,
Definitely. I agree. Absolutely. This is a big year for first round running backs. He's someone, if you, depends on how you do your draft order, whether it's you choose by first person that one gets a choose or it's random. If you end up being in the back end of that draft round, you could feel good about drafting Leonard Fournette and then getting one of the better wide receivers as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a great strategy if you're back into the first round, taking Fournette and then one of those elite wide receivers who's kind of slipping to late first, early second.
A Fournette Julio wouldn't be too bad, right?
Fuck no. You might even be able to swing Fournette Beckham. Like there are things that you can do there. Let's talk about the 2 guys behind him. They are TJ Yeldon, TJ Tasty, former favorite of Don. And then Corey Grant. So TJ Yeldon is going 3rd pick in the 14th round. That is running back 1559. Corey Grant is currently going undrafted. Are you interested in either of them? And which do you think has more upside if Fournette does go down?
Yeah, so I don't know too much about Corey Grant just yet, but TJ Yeldon, we've kind of seen what he can do. I will say I was kind of surprised his average was rush per carry. I'm sorry, was 5.2. I was really surprised about that. I thought he was like back in his mid threes like he was the year before. So he was pretty efficient when running the ball, as well as he was averaging about 7.5 yards per reception. So he actually, it was a very small sample size there because he was with Chris Ivory as well, and Fournette was the lion's share of the running back. So he actually outperformed what I thought he would. As of now, he is the clear-cut number 2. Man, I mean, in the 14th round, I'm okay with it if you need another running back. But he's not someone where I really need to have TJ Yeldon. We've kind of seen what he's done. He's lost his starting role there from when he was in 2015. He shared with Chris Ivory behind Leonard Fournette. So it is what it is. You can go elsewhere in the last pick of the last round.
Yeah, you can take people with bigger upside than TJ Yeldon, and he can be that guy where if Fournette goes down, he's the first guy off the waiver wire. Or like if someone has him on their bench, like that's fine too. Right. I feel like it's really hard to have a strong opinion on whether or not TJ Yeldon should be owned at this point. Corey Grant as well. I kind of like, he's got big play potential. He broke a couple 50-plus yarders last year. So if he gets in a situation where Fournette goes down, like you said, Ivory was there last year. He's not there this year. So you've got Yeldon and Grant, even like a 60-40 split. If you're going to tell me a guy with the big play potential of Corey Grant is going to be getting 40% of these touches, say like 10, 11, 12 touches during a game, yeah, I'll throw him in my flex in like a heavy bye week, no problem.
Yeah.
So I think both of those guys, you don't need to own them. You could draft them. If Fournette goes down, they should be top guys off the waiver wire.
Yeah.
Anything else on those running backs, or should we move to wide receiver?
Let's go to wide receivers, man.
All right. I find it really difficult to have strong opinions on any of these guys as well. Maybe you're a bit different than me. But the big 4 here, I'll just go through all of them at once, and then we can kind of throw all the information out there. Marquise Lee, 5th pick in the 11th round. That is wide receiver 50. D.D. Westbrook, third pick in the 14th round. That is wide receiver 62. Keelan Cole, 10th pick in the 14th round, wide receiver 67. And Dante Moncrief coming over from Indianapolis. He is currently going undrafted.
Yeah.
Which of these guys are you targeting, if any of them?
Man, it's kind of crazy. I think Marquise Lee is a little underappreciated. I think he's been a very consistent performer, even when Allen Hurns and Robinson were there. He's been a guy that, if you had him in the flex, has shown out for you. You know, he's obviously the main wide receiver at this point, and he's going ahead of guys like Mike Williams, Kenny Stills, Geronimo Allison. I'm cool with that. I'd probably take Marquise Lee over them. So I'd be fine with where he's going, but I'm also really I don't know between D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole, because I feel like D.D. Westbrook's been a hot name that they've been talking about a lot, but a lot of them are saying that Keelan Cole can also edge him out as that number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think you're right on Marquise Lee. He's been he's had a great floor when he's been out there consistently. Last year, he was seeing almost 7 targets a game. That's the kind of guy where you can plug him in a decent matchup, or plug him in when you're a little bit, say you have a guy on the bye, that sort of thing. And you can feel pretty good about it. 7 targets in a game with, Marquise Lee's known as a pretty fast guy with that kind of speed upside. You're looking pretty solid. In terms of the rest of them, you're right. D.D. Westbrook, he was a Heisman finalist in 2016. This is a guy who has a ton of talent, has the big playability. But then you look at Keelan Cole, and he clearly outplayed him last year. He had over 700 receiving yards as a rookie.
Yeah.
And like, if you were to tell me, there's this second year wide receiver, he had 700 plus receiving yards his rookie year, and now he's coming into a situation where, it may be even better and it may be a more prolific offense. Like, I would say, yeah, absolutely. But then you're like, oh, it's Keelan Cole and it's on the Jaguars, and it gives you a bit of pause. So I'm really not sure. I think another situation very important to monitor reps with the first team in preseason, particularly that third preseason game where we get a full first half of these starters. Who's out there in which positions? Which guy is in the slot? Which guys are in the red zone? Because that might be a thing where Dante Moncrief, even if he's not in every snap in between the 20s, you might have him in the red zone. And that causes an issue too when we're trying to evaluate the upside of these guys. Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on any of them outside of Marquise Lee. I think is a good value, and everyone else is kind of worth a dart throw, which they are right now. So that's fine.
I think if I had to go with the flyer, though, I think I would actually take Keelan Cole over D.D. Westbrook.
I'm right there with you. We saw the production from Keelan Cole last year, and we saw some big plays from D.D. Westbrook, but we didn't see the production like Cole had. So I'm there with you. I think Keelan Cole is the flyer to take if there is one.
Yeah, and I mean he's going like number 69 wide receiver. He's like he's at the end of the 14th round. If you're gonna go for a flyer on a wide receiver, why not? I mean, he really picked up the second half of the season where probably from week 10 on, man, where he was only getting 3 or 4 receptions each, but he's week 13 to 15, he got a touchdown each game. And the last 3 to 4 weeks, he was 100 yards plus for receiving. So someone that he was building rapport with Blake Bortles, someone that he kind of felt comfortable with at the end of the season. So I would probably take my flyer on him over Westbrook at this point.
Yeah, that's very fair. Let's move on to the tight end position where they got rid of Mercedes Lewis, who is now with your beloved Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
They brought in Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who was previously with the Jets. He is being drafted. He's going tight end 18. That's the 5th pick in the 14th round. So not being drafted highly, but he is being drafted. Niles Paul is also on that team. You don't need to worry about him. I just needed to include him because he was a former favorite of mine a couple of years ago. And he got hurt, was out for the year, and has never really come back the same. So pour one out for Niles Paul, I guess. But what do you think about ASJ? He flashed early in the season last year, but then really dropped off. Yeah, do you think he's worth this late draft spot, or would you rather just leave him undrafted?
Yeah, someone that's just trying to find a home, man. He did start off really hot and then fell off. No, I mean, listen, I think he could be someone. I think he's a good DFS player at some point where you're going to throw ASJ in there and he's gonna show out for you. But right now, number 18, there are plenty, especially if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, that there's no reason to go ASJ or spin the wheel and go by matchups before you go draft him and waste a pick on him.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think Dante Moncrief being there really decreases his touchdown upside. Like if Moncrief wasn't there, and also obviously they're going to give the rock to Fournette in the red zone. But if Moncrief wasn't there, I would say ASJ would be their number one passing option in the red zone. But with Moncrief there, that kind of complicates things. It's also worth noting that the tight end position as a whole, not even just one tight end, but the whole position last year for Jacksonville only got 79 targets. So you need ASJ to really increase on that number in order to be a productive tight end for you. And tight ends, again, as a whole, only got 16 red zone targets last year for the Jaguars. So neither of those are particularly enticing numbers. If you were to tell me a single tight end was going to get 79 targets and 16 red zone targets, I would say, maybe I'll take him in the 14th round.
Sure.
But now you're telling me that's the entire team's outlook. That's like, ASJ plus maybe a little Niles Paul plus whoever their third tight end is, getting in on the big snaps down by the goal line. I don't know. It's just not something that I'm really looking at. Unless again he flashes in preseason and we see him really being used heavily in the red zone.
Joe,
do you have anything else on the Jaguars?
Man, that is all I got for the Jaguars.
Jaguars. All right, cool. Yeah, I don't have anything else either. Other than I think you should play Odell Beckham against them in DFS tournaments week 1. I think he's going to burn that secondary, but that's a sneak peek for the beginning of the season.
You think Odell's going to burn him?
Contrarian play, baby. Odell against everyone's going to see that Jaguars secondary. No one's going to play him. He's like super cheap on DK too. I'm really pumped up to play Odell in tournaments week 1.
Wow. With the Jalen Ramsey matchup, huh?
Yeah, I think they'll move him around the field and Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins were both able to burn the Jaguars secondary last year. So I think elite receivers can do it.
All right. I won't say you're wrong.
All right. That was a sneak peek of maybe some week 1 content, but needed to throw it in there, I guess. Anyway, we are going to hear from Auction Draft, and then we are going to speak about the Tennessee Titans. Here's Auction Draft. All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Again, that promo code LTFF, that is all capitals, will get you 50% off your league over there at Auction Draft. Keep that in mind as you're going towards the season, planning out your drafts and whatnot, which are coming up quickly. I have my first one in a little more than a week. Don, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans. We have a coaching change. So Mike Vrabel is the new head coach. And, he'll be handling the defensive side of the ball. But I think more importantly for our purposes, Matt LaFleur is taking over as the offensive coordinator. And he is a coaching disciple of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. And that should get each and every one of you horny. I am really horny for the Titans offense. Don,
I didn't put my jerkin
for. Good. You still got it out, man. What do you think about Marcus Mariota? First pick of the 12th round, quarterback 17. Because again, very horny for that landing spot for Marcus Mariota there.
Yeah, it's funny. This is probably one of the teams I have no idea, man. Marcus Mariota. I think a few of us were pretty high on him last year to let him fall to us at a good position and take him. I think I took him last year in a few leagues, and it was quite the disappointment for Marcus Mariota. Yeah, the coach changes should help out, but just going to stick to the QB. There's so many of them, man. Marcus Mariota is not going to be the guy that I'm going to let fall to me. I'll get someone before that. I'd rather have like a Phillip Rivers or an Andrew Luck, who's not really falling. He's the 8th, but a Matty Ice, Jared Goff, I'd probably even still take over Marcus Mariota because I don't trust him this year.
Okay. For me, I'll explain a little bit why I'm so pumped on it. So, we get him out of the exotic smash mouth bullshit that Mike Mularkey, had them doing. I just think his efficiency is really going to jump back up to those levels that we saw the first 2 years of his career. Also, another reason for that efficiency to jump back up, in week 16 of 2016, he broke his leg. So he was coming off of a broken leg at the end of last year, wasn't, playing football, wasn't moving most of the offseason. This year, he's had a full offseason to come back healthy. So I am very excited. In 2016, Mariota had 26 touchdown passes. In 2017, he had 13 touchdown passes. Yeah. His adjusted yards per attempt in 2016, 7.99 yards per attempt. In 2017, that was down to 6.2. If you look at, basically any sort of stat that you want to take to evaluate Marcus Mariota's years, outside of completion percentage, which, like, who the fuck cares if the completions are so short and not efficient? I'm so about it. It's like, it's ridiculous. I think he's gonna really have that breakout season that a lot of us thought he was going to have last year. He still has that rushing potential as well. He's eclipsed over 300 yards rushing both of the past 2 years. He had 5 touchdowns on the ground last year. So you've got that factored into, I think that offense is just going to be so much better under Matt LaFleur. I'm really a huge fan of taking Marcus Mariota where he is.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that he has to play better than last year. He had 5 weeks that he didn't throw a touchdown. It's a lot.
Yeah. You can't really deal with that from your starting quarterback.
No, that's a lot. So I'm still passing on him. I trust in what you're saying, Walsh, but I'm going elsewhere. I'm not falling for Marcus Mariota just this year.
Okay, fair enough.
I won't doubt what you say. So I'll say Walsh said it first.
Fair enough. As long as we have that on record when he finishes his QB4 or whatever, then I'm fine.
Wow, QB4. Walsh said it first.
I don't know if I'd go that high, but anyway. Let's talk about the running back.
My DON plan at the bottom. Quote by Walsh.
Yeah. Let's move on to these running backs. So we have DeMarco Murray is out of town. He's been their running back 1. Derrick Henry appears to be the lead back in here. He's currently going running back 18, 10th pick in the 3rd round. And then we do have Dion Lewis got brought in from New England. He's also going pretty high. About 2 rounds lower, 11th pick in the 5th round. That's running back 28. I guess the expectation is that Henry's going to be the bruiser. Dion Lewis will be more the change of pace guy. And then Henry will be getting the goal line work. Dion Lewis, the passing work. How do you see this split playing out? And what do you think about these guys relative to their ADPs?
Yeah, man, that's why, I don't know. This is it's really fucking me, especially. This is I think Derrick Henry's throwing a major wrench in a lot of my mocks too, because I've been trying because I'm really enticed about the wide receivers since there's so many running backs going first. I'm like, if I go 2 wide receivers and then a Derrick Henry lands me, and now I just don't even feel good about it because Dion Lewis, he is a talent. He really is a good player. And I think, and I've been reading a lot of Derrick Henry. The plan is to have him as the workhorse, the plan. But I think that they know that they're not going to shy away from Dion Lewis either. So I think he's going to take more of a share than the plan is saying, which is making me really nervous. So I think overall, the Dion Lewis is the running back to get at a later round than Derrick Henry, which is making it unfortunate for me because I really want to try a different strategy with maybe going a few wide receivers heavy, but landing with Derrick Henry as either my 1 or 2 back is kind of scaring me.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. It's scary to have a guy who has 32 career targets in 2 seasons as your number 1 running back, as you were saying there. It's just really difficult, and it's not something that you want to do. That being said, the smart money is on him really dominating the red zone work. He has been a good runner. He's averaged 4.3 yards per carry in his career. He's an impressive guy. It's just when is he going to be on the field and when is he not going to be on the field? And that's what I'm really going to be looking for in preseason, particularly. Is it a breakdown where Henry's on the field first and second down, Lewis is on the field for third down? Is Henry getting a series and then Lewis is getting a series? Like, not only percentage of snaps for these guys and percentages of work, percentages of targets, routes run, whatever the case may be, how are they coming in and out of the game? Because I think that's going to dictate a lot of really how you can expect Derrick Henry to be used. If they get him the 2-minute drill, if they get behind, is Derrick Henry going to see the field? Is he only a guy you can rely on in games where the Titans are up or it's still a close game? Like, what if their defense isn't anything spectacular? What if they go down 17-3 in the first quarter? You know, like, is Derrick Henry fucked? Are you done for? So these are all things, like you said, I don't fucking know the answer to.
Yeah, it's a big worrisome, especially because he could be. I mean, I know he's moved down a few spots. I know he was ahead of Darius Juice or Geis, however you say it.
yeah.
I like saying Juice better.
You're right, that is better.
I know he was ahead of him. I think he might have been ahead of Shady. I don't know. He was around that ballpark. And it's the point where if you're someone that's in a PPR league and it's like, I want like a Julio Odell at the end of the, and then next thing you know, because you're at the background, Derrick Henry could be your number one running back. That's really scary.
Yeah, it is. And the guys around him, it's weird. It's sort of like a tier of guys who I think collectively the fantasy community believes are good, but are not sure whether or not they'll have the full workload. Like Darius Geis, Alex Collins, Jay Ajayi, Kenyon Drake. Like, all of these guys are like, oh, we think they're pretty solid, but like, are they going to get used all the time? Are they going to be these bell cows that we need them to be? So it's a really weird tier of running backs that you're looking at with a lot of questions about it.
That's the problem I've seen with that. If you're someone that's looking for that strategy, that you're going to hit a lot of uncertainty. It's just not going to make you feel good.
Yeah. And I think another knock, not a knock against Henry, but another reason to kind of be skeptical is that whereas we know to this point that Derrick Henry cannot be productive in the pass game, we also know that Dion Lewis can run between the tackles, because that's what the Patriots had him do towards the end of last year. Game 8 onwards last year, he had 15 or more carries in 5 out of 9 games. He eclipsed 100 yards rushing in 3 games. He still had 32 targets, the same as Derrick Henry's 2 years in a 9-game span there. And then in the last 2 games of the season, he got 24 or more carries in both of them. And then to show off the rest of his skill set, first 2 playoff games, he goes out and gets 18 targets in the pass game. Yeah. So Dion Lewis,
he's a talented guy too, man. He's good.
Yeah, he's kind of thought of as a change of pace guy, but like, he can do pretty much everything that you need a running back to do on the field, and that's worrisome if you're taking Derrick Henry that high up in the draft. Yeah, if I'm looking to take either of them, it's Lewis 2 rounds later, I think, and it's not particularly close for me.
No, he's just before the 6th round, Dion Lewis. I mean, that's a big deal. I think that's the value you need to go. It's unfortunate because I really like Derrick Henry since the rookie year, and he's obviously proven that he can be an NFL running back and the number 1 RB, but they just always seem to have that other guy. Whether it be DeMarco Murray and now Dion Lewis. So
yeah,
and tough.
And I mean, if my assertion is correct that this offense is going to be pretty prolific, it's also possible that Derrick Henry rushes for like 18 touchdowns. So like, the upside is extremely there, but the downside is also there, I think.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to the wide receivers. This is it's a little weird. Again, like, I kind of don't know on these ones, but Corey Davis, first pick of the 6th round, wide receiver 27. Rashard Matthews, 4th pick of the 12th round, wide receiver 54. Currently not practicing for an undisclosed injury, but could come back at any time, supposedly. And then you've also got Taywan Taylor, not getting drafted, but running with the starters right now since Matthews not practicing, and will likely be their starting slot receiver when we do have the full core out there. So starting with Davis, do you think he's worth that 6th round pick?
I'm going to go elsewhere.
Okay.
I think Corey Davis I think he's another name that everyone's been talking about a lot. He's got a lot of talent. He's someone that I actually reached for last year and I held on for a while, but he had that hamstring injury. I'm going to stay away from it now. Walsh, maybe you're thinking otherwise because you're feeling a Mariota comeback number 4 QB. But when I see someone that's still around, that's Michael Crabtree or Sammy Watkins, you got Will Fuller, Emmanuel Sanders, some of those guys, Randall Cobb, I might just reach for those guys or maybe go for a running back that round. I don't know if I'm going for Corey Davis. I haven't seen enough just yet. They've been talking high about him. Walsh, you like Mariota this year. He is going to be the number one wide receiver as long as he stays healthy, but I'd probably go like Crabtree before Corey Davis.
Okay, that's fair. I can't argue with taking other guys ahead of him. With no context of where they're being drafted or where he's being drafted, I do like Corey Davis a lot this year. He's the all-time NCAA receiving leader, which means he's pretty good. And he's a guy, like you said, he was hampered by those hamstring injuries the entire year. So we never really got to see what Corey Davis could truly do. I'm having trouble with, like the guys around him, like you said, Crabtree, Edelman, Sammy Watkins, even some of those guys we talked about last podcast around Will Fuller, Manny Sanders, Randall Cobb, Jamison Crowder. How do these guys compare sort of to Corey Davis? And I think there's an argument to be made there. I'm not sure exactly where I fall on that value right now. I don't know if I would be taking Corey Davis first pick in the 6th round, but if you show him to me end of the 6th round, yeah, I'd probably do that. And I do think he has the upside to be a top 12 wide receiver, no problem this year.
Cool. Number 4 QB with a number 12 wide receiver.
Guarantee all of it. I'm not projecting range of outcomes at all. Anyway, Rashard Matthews, like we said, he's currently not practicing. He's really going low in this draft. Do you have injury or do you have injuries? Do you have a reason to take him, or are you looking at taking him?
I actually love Rashard Matthews. I think he's probably one of the most unappreciated or underappreciated fantasy wide receivers in the past 3 or 4 seasons. Again, he came up. I think he was probably the number 1 tight end. Tight end, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now the only thing that makes me worried is that he's not showing up to camp for an undisclosed injury. So that's something I'm going to follow up closely. But if he's going right now, the 4th pick in the 12th round, and I need a wide receiver, I'm probably going Rashard Matthews. I've kind of valued him higher than a lot of people have in the past few years, but he's someone that in midseason you need someone to play in flex or wide receiver too. Rashard Matthews has shown up, so he's someone that I like a lot. I'm all about Rashard Matthews in that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has the upside to be like a top 24 fantasy wide receiver for you this year, but like you don't need that when you're taking him in the 12th round. If you can get Rashard Matthews and get a couple fill-in starts from him, then he's completely worth that ADP. And like you said, I think it's very likely that you are able to get a couple fill-in starts from him. So yeah, I'm also about him at that ADP for sure.
Yeah. He's like the perfect receiver to plug in when you have a bad injury in the midseason, or you have the bye weeks where you need to play someone. I think he's always been one of the more dependable fantasy players I've plugged in.
Absolutely. What do you think about Taywan Taylor, who will likely be playing in the slot? We'll see when Matthews gets healthy, but he flashed some talent last year as well, and he should be on the field a decent amount this year. He's going undrafted. I would probably take him over guys like Christian Kirk or Mohamed Sanu or like Cortland Sutton at the end of the draft. I kind of like Taywan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, it's all preference at that point. Like I said, Walsh, you're a little bit higher on Tennessee right now, so that's your preference. For me in that round, I'm probably going like a Keelan Cole. So okay. I'd probably stick with someone like that. But listen, that's off of preference. You seem to like Tennessee offense this year. It's going to be a turnaround. He's someone that I'd be totally fine with you going with the late time flyer. At that point, you really can't go wrong with anyone unless you're drafting T.O. who hasn't been in the league for how many years.
He did get a tryout with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, though.
Wow.
The day after he got inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he worked out for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which is hilarious.
He is in ridiculous shape, though. And I just saw like a video of him like a month ago, like dunk on someone.
Yeah, he claims he can still run a 4.40. I don't know if that's true, but he's saying it.
I won't doubt him, but he's not coming back in the NFL, that's for sure.
No, I wouldn't think so. You should probably draft Taywan Taylor over Terrell Owens in 2018. If you come away from this podcast with any bit of advice, that's what I want you to remember. No, yeah, we've said it for years. Once you get down to these rounds, it's all a matter of preference. If you think Taywan Taylor is really good and you like him, if you like went to your college, I don't know what college you went to, but you're like, this guy's fucking great, and I'm gonna take him because of that, then like fucking do it. Like, who am I to say no at that point? All right, so those are the wide receivers. Let's talk about tight end, where Delaney Walker resides. We also have Jonnu Smith, but I think he's less important despite having a couple touchdowns last year. Delaney Walker, Don, 5th pick in the 7th round. That's tight end number 8. Yeah. Where do you stand on him?
Like it.
Me too.
Delaney Walker has been my solid tight end for the past like 2-3 seasons. I've just been Delaney Walkering, and it's been what I need. So Delaney Walker, he's probably my numero. I mean, I like him at 8, man. I mean, now that Kirk Cousins is at Minnesota, I won't hate on Kyle Rudolph and put Delaney ahead of him. But I think that's the perfect spot for him. I wouldn't take anyone else behind him ahead of him. I think that's great, and I would definitely take him if he's the next available guy.
Yeah, 100%. Just for some context on Walker and his production, he has gotten 100 plus targets and 800 plus receiving yards or more for the past 4 seasons. So Don likes what? Consistency.
That's right.
And that's what Delaney Walker has given us. He also led the Titans in red zone targets last year. Their second highest target getter, to use a weird turn of phrase, in the red zone was Eric Decker. He is gone. He's on the Patriots. So you're looking at sort of a gap in red zone targets that Delaney Walker may even be able to pick up some more, even though he already led the team in them. He also had the lowest touchdown total of that 4-year span that I was talking about this past year. He had 3 touchdowns only, even though he led the team in red zone targets. The highest in that span was 7. So it's not like we're going to project Delaney Walker to come out and have 9 touchdowns this year, but like 6, yeah, that seems pretty likely. And that's better than what he did last year. So yeah, if you can get 100 plus targets, 800 plus receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns out of the tight end 8, you're getting yourself a deal for sure.
Yeah. And 2 things. One, Marcus Mariota, this seems to be his guy, especially under pressure, that he seems to always go back to. Delaney Walker has probably been his most his biggest fallback guys to just go back to Delaney Walker. And 2, there's no inconsistency with like his targets through the weeks. Like he's getting over about a handful or more almost every single week.
Yeah.
So there is no like 10 one week, 2 the next week. I mean, his reception, even his reception, I'm just looking at. I mean, he's averaging like 4 to 7 every single week.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Over 4 every week.
Yeah, you can pretty much like look at him and be like, oh, you're going to get somewhere between 5 and 9 targets this week. Mm-hmm. And like, if you can get that out of a starting tight end, great.
Against any defense.
Yeah, and you can get that in the 7th round this year, which like maybe the upside for tight end 1 is not there. But man, are you securing yourself a tight end floor, obviously barring injury, but like barring injury, you are securing yourself not having to worry 1 second about the tight end position, except for the bye week for the rest of the year. That's it.
Definitely.
Which is worth something to, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should pretty much wrap it up for the Titans. I am extremely horny about them, as has already been mentioned. Don is slightly less horny, though he's
not as horny, but I kept the Jergens out for you.
Yeah, he's keeping the lotion out. He's jagging off. I'm horny for the Titans. This is just an extremely sexual podcast.
It's very sexual.
Yeah, which you know what? Sometimes you got to do it, man. Sometimes you got to get horny and jag off, I guess. All right, Don, you got anything else for the wonderful listeners?
No, that's about it.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't have anything else either. It's the first weekend of preseason. We still have to get you guys the AFC East as well. We will be getting you guys the AFC East. East. That's the second time I've said that this preseason.
Said East? Too. I thought you said West.
I'm just slowly but surely losing my mind. But we will get you guys the AFC East because that is very necessary to talk about. And I would assume we will also get you guys a podcast next week covering news from these games, news from camps, covering some draft strategy that we're looking at. Now that we're pretty much wrapping up these divisions, we're going to be getting into some of the fun stuff, some of the stuff that's really interesting, looking at draft theory, looking at the different news that's coming in as it's happening to make sure you guys know everything that you need to know for your drafts coming up. So please keep an eye out for additional podcasts. You can go back and listen to the rest of the division previews as well as our auction strategy podcast if you would like to. But for Don, I am Walsh. This is Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Later, podcast.
All right.